morning and welcome to The Skinny for Friday, May 8th. I'm Mitch Perry, the senior political reporter for the Florida Phoenix, joined by my partner, Ray Rowe, the editor-in-chief of Creative Loafing newspaper. Hey, Ray.
How's it going, Mitch? That was a great show, Down and Dirty, by the way.
It
a lot
was.
of energy in there. Good energy in the building.
Yes. And it's interesting because, of course, Lynn Hurtak, city council member, this Tampa mayor's race, let's be honest, though, it's not for a little less than 10 months from now. You know,
It feels like it's 30 years like going
we're really
down
focusing
the road.
on it, but and I said this on the radio the last few weeks, though, in the next biggest city in the Tampa Bay area, of course, St. Petersburg has a big election this summer, not next year, this summer, a little over 3 months away, and that includes a mayor's race. Yeah, Ken Welch, of course, is the incumbent and running for re-election, and we're going to have the first of the other, we'll hopefully have Mayor Welch on. Actually, I reached out this morning to his office. Hopefully, we'll get that set up later this summer, but we're going to have one of the candidates on in just a few minutes here, so we look forward to that. And that's what to tell you. It's Kevin Batdorf. He's the former Shore Acres Neighborhood Association president. We were going to have somebody on about the litigation. Of course, last week we talked extensively about the congressional redistricting map that took place. Governor DeSantis signed that into law, his own map, on Monday. Litigation followed. There's 3 separate lawsuits taking place. They've all been filed in the 2nd District up in Tallahassee. Maybe I'll consolidate into one. We were going to get one of the groups on there that didn't play out, but we'll have plenty of time to discuss that. It's really interesting, Ray, because, of course, we had Representative Castor come on last Friday and say to us that she is, in fact, running in her same district, a district which is roughly now a plus 10 Trump district, if you will, if it was the same people voting there in 2024. And I'm just curious who's going to be the Republican running, or, even the Republicans getting that race. It's so scrambled right now. We're really seeing that in South Florida. Democrats deciding which district they're going to run in. So that's something we'll be continuing to watch over the next few weeks. But, folks, we've got something coming up Tuesday, okay? So the legislature, who did vote last week for a special session on the redistricting map, is coming back this coming Tuesday for the state budget. Yes, the only thing that they're constitutionally supposed to be doing, they're going to resume that. It's going to take several weeks, but many things on there that I think our listeners are going to care about. And one of them that's really interesting is there's an impasse regarding the situation with the University of South Florida Sarasota Manatee campus. So basically, and this is a budget issue because the House budget includes shutting down that campus and transferring the buildings as part of the campus to New College. That was approved on a 76-28 vote in the House. The Senate Appropriations Committee, however, adopted a delete everything amendment to the House proposal. So that is going to be coming up this coming week or the next couple of weeks because they're going to be there all month. We're going to have somebody talking right now, and I think joining us right now via Zoom is Dr. Karen Holbrook. She was USF Sarasota Manatee's former regional chancellor until December of 2024, and she has extensive higher education leadership experience. Dr. Holbrook, are you with us?
I am. I'm on my phone. My computer is not acting right today.
Okay, but you sound nice and clear here, so we really appreciate it. Great to have you here with us. So this is interesting, to say the least, this whole situation here. What's behind this, in your opinion? Why is this possibly going to happen?
Well, I think the governor has been very positive about moving forward with advancing New College, giving it more space, giving it more buildings, just in general, and promoting that. And our 2 campuses are very close to one another, and we do some things together. And I think the governor is pushing for New College to take over USFSM. But I'm going on, but what you have to realize is that USFSM and New College are very, very different institutions with different goals and different programs, and you can't really merge the 2 of them. You can merge a few programs potentially, but the 2 of them are very different from one another and serve very different purposes within our community.
And what would you say is the sentiment? I think I saw a letter that you sent out. You were part of that, right, to the legislature as they convene next week. You're very much against this, and it seems like a lot of the folks who have been involved with USF Sarasota Manatee, nobody really wants this. Right, as you just mentioned, this is like not a great fit, in your opinion.
It's a very poor fit.
How many students attend USF Sarasota Manatee?
Well, there are about 2,000 of them that attend on campus. But the important thing is we teach about 16,000, 15 to 16,000 students, because a number of the students in St. Pete, on the St. Pete campus and on the Tampa campus, like our faculty, and so they are online. So our benefit is much bigger than just those 2,000 students, although those 2,000 students are very important because they're community citizens, and they are the ones most likely going to stay within our community of Bradenton and Sarasota. So our impact is very significant.
Again, we're speaking with Dr. Karen Holbrook. She was USF Sarasota Manatee's former regional chancellor. So we're talking about this campus transfer, which has become a sticking point in the budget negotiations. The House plan, aligned with Governor DeSantis, would move all of USF Sarasota Manatee property and facilities to New College by July 1st and shift over $22 million in recurring funding from USF to New College. The Senate is saying so far no to that. What would happen to the students here? Would they have to go to, if they choose to stay inside the USF system, transfer to USF?
Yeah, all the students and faculty will be taken care of one way or another. Now, they may transfer to one of the other schools. I'm not sure about the teach out on campus specifically, but they will get their USF degrees. So that's safe. Although, if you've signed up for Sarasota Manatee, you signed up for a very specific campus that's very different from the others. And so it's not quite the same, but they would get their degrees, and USF would be assuring that to all of our students. And the faculty will have jobs, they have said, and staff. All are very important.
Dr. Holbrook, you mentioned about this, we've seen this transformation of New College down there in Sarasota over the last few years. It's very different in terms of the philosophy of what it has been for decades until it was basically taken over. We've got now Richard Corcoran, the former House Speaker, conservative, who is now leading that institution. What are your thoughts about what's happened over there at New College?
Well, I shouldn't comment on New College. I think it's been a very valuable asset to the community. It's been a very different one. And the students that go there, by and large, leave. They don't stay in this community. I know that Dr. Corcoran or Mr. Corcoran, or I should call him the Honorable Mr. Corcoran, has been promoting community support from the college. But it's very different, and the students are very different compared with ours. Our students and our programs have been designed specifically to meet the work needs of this community. So we turn out students in the hospitality industry, in the insurance industry, in all of the businesses that are local, and in the schools, which is very important to preparing teachers for the schools, and the nurses. So our programs are very well designed, and we pick up students from State College of Florida who have their AA degree and want to go on and get a bachelor's degree. So we serve many, many purposes, but by and large, our students are prepared to go into the workforce. And that's what we aim to do. And we add new programs as it's necessary.
Dr. Holbrook, you talked about the community. I'm curious, here in Tampa, we're not always talking about Sarasota Manatee, but lately between this New College thing and this right now, we're talking a lot about, you have a lot of reporters calling you. How has this affected the community itself? A community that, maybe we don't talk about in the news all the time. Has it split the community in the same way the country is kind of divided, or has it galvanized it? What's it like around town?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. There is, New College was also at the point of taking over the museums that are part of the Ringling, and that died down last year, gratefully. And Florida State is the one that manages those. So that's gone away. It's hard to say. I don't know how large the population is here that is supporting New College. I am sure there is a contingent that does. But what we've been trying to do is activate the group of people here that care about USF Sarasota Manatee, and I think we've done a pretty darn good job of getting a lot of people behind it. The letter, as you saw, was signed by a number of people, but the meeting that we had several weeks ago in our new auditorium in the new student center, we were standing room only in a 350-person room, and there were people all over in the back. So we are really attracting a lot of the community who really want our campus to stay here and to be part of the community. And the one thing that isn't in the letter that I think is really important, two things actually. One is that our community is growing, and as it's growing, you're bringing in new companies, and as you bring in new companies, you bring in a need for more workforce and for reskilling the existing workforce. That's one point. The second thing is that USF is an AAU university, and there are only 63 universities in the nation out of several thousand that are AAU. So they are the top of the line academically. And USF Sarasota Manatee is an AAU university, and to have that kind of a university in a community like ours is really a plum.
And we want to say that's the Association of American Universities, right?
Yes,
talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to go back. You mentioned this letter that was sent to the legislature this week, and quote from it, actually. You write about the fact that, there's been no meaningful community input, no financial justification, no viable plan to replace the affordable, high-quality education USF Sarasota Manatee provides. And you also say, right in the letter, that the business community is just as clearly as spoken, the Manatee, Sarasota, and Venice Chambers of Commerce, together with the Lakewood Branch Business Alliance, have all expressed strong opposition, emphasizing that USF SM is vital to our region's economic strength. And it's also the responsible financial choice. A DOGE report showed USF spends about $72,000 per degree, while New College spends nearly $500,000 per degree. Of course, the two schools have coexisted for 25 years, each with a distinct mission. The fact that this right now there is no line item for this in the Senate, has to be encouraging for you, because there has to be, as I was talking to Ray before the show began, there's going to be trade-offs going on up there in the next couple of weeks in terms of priorities for both these chambers. The fact that this is a priority of Governor DeSantis, I would think means it's not, anything could happen here, right? I mean,
absolutely.
I think,
yeah. It's not safe. It's not safe. So, that's why we're doing the pressure as much as we can to get community people to say, this is what we want in our community. So that's really important to get the community support.
And Dr. Holbrook, what would you like our listeners here, before we close out here with you, would you like them to contact the legislature about this?
Oh, absolutely. Anyone that can contact our speaker to come in, Senator Boyd and our representatives. So important that they hear that this is a valuable asset to our community. We'd love it.
All right, we'll leave it there. We've been speaking with Dr. Karen Holbrook. She was USF Sarasota Manatee's former regional chancellor, and she's discussing the situation going up in Tallahassee next week in terms of a plan that would shut down USF Sarasota Manatee campus and transfer those assets over to New College. Dr. Holbrook, thank you so much for joining us here on The Skinny this morning.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Okay, we'll move on. And again, Ray, it's going to be very interesting.
You.
Ray, one other thing we say before we go talk about St. Pete's mayor's race coming up, and that is we were talking about the Ray situation, which why not? Because it's going to be decided pretty quickly in the next couple months. But there is a $150 million ask by that's in the Senate, actually. Danny Burgess put that in there. That is for the Hillsborough State College, transferring that, all the things that would happen if this plan were to go into effect, to make sure that school was still very, viable and all that in terms of the buildings and all that. And there is no appropriation in the House. It's kind of the opposite of what's going on here with the college we just talked about. And we know that a couple of the House members and the Republicans from Hillsborough, Danny Alvarez and Michael Owen, wrote an op-ed in the Tampa Bay Times recently saying they're totally against this idea of giving, this plan to use all this taxpayer money from Hillsborough and Tampa for the Rays project. So the Rays ownership right now, Babby, Kevin, Patrick Zolofsky, yep. They're saying we need this $150 million. That's why they want this MOU to be approved right now. So that's going to be another thing that our listeners should be really watching the next couple of weeks in Tallahassee.
Yeah, this whole thing has been wild. I do applaud, Ken Babby for getting out there. He was in front of Tampa City Council the other day. He could barely speak.
A 4-hour meeting, I
He's
believe.
out there all the time. But it is so strange. Even if we're going to go like anecdotal and metaphorically, baseball the season is so long, so there's no mistakes, right? And and yet we're rushing through this thing.
$1 billion
And
we're talking about.
It is a wild thing that's going on.
It is. And we'll continue to, of course, talk about it here on the show. Okay, moving on now. Let's talk about this mayor's race coming up in St. Petersburg because, folks, it's happening very soon. Ken Welch, as we mentioned a moment ago, elected in 2021. He's got 5 years in office because St. Pete changed the election cycle there. He's running for re-election. He's got 6 people, I guess, also are running against him here. And so we're going to start having the candidates in here throughout the summer. And we're going to start today with Kevin Batdorf, who is a longtime real estate broker, St. Pete native, who announced in March that he is filing to run for mayor. And unlike Ken Welch or Governor Charlie Crist, who also now is officially in the race, or even City Council member Brandy Gabbard, Kevin Batdorf, you said when you announced, we have several members that are running that are career politicians. We don't need career politicians anymore. It's not working for us. But this is your time, you believe.
It is. I did not grow up wanting to be a mayor of anything. I'm not a politician. I don't like politics in general, especially the way they divide our neighbors. But through my volunteer work as a neighborhood association president
in Shore Acres,
I've had the honor and pleasure of meeting with the mayor and his administration several times regarding issues that come up, and we need new leadership. I can't say that enough. This administration has failed the city, and that's the one and only reason that I decided to run, is because the leadership is taking us in the wrong direction.
As Mitch pointed out, this race is coming up fast. There's not a ton of people in this race compared to the Tampa race, for sure. Have you been able to draw any kind of common ground with some of the other of Ken Welch's opponents? And is there anybody else that you like? What are some of the ideas that you think need to come out here as the incumbent faces this challenge?
Well, like we mentioned, I'm not a politician, so all the other candidates that are, I guess, leading in polls are politicians. We have a council member who was a rubber stamp for the mayor.
Until recently.
Until she decided to run for mayor. We have Charlie. I mean, I like Charlie. He's a really nice guy. I know him. I've talked to him. But you have to wonder, why is he running for mayor? Who brought him back to St. Pete? And here's one that really throws me off. He's raised over $1 million. Why does Seminole Gaming feel it's appropriate to donate $50,000 to a city of St. Petersburg mayoral candidate? What is the benefit there? So I'm running a grassroots campaign. I don't have a PAC. Don't want a PAC. I want people to donate if they feel like they want to donate. I'm going to get my word out through social media, through other media forms. So,
and you mentioned a moment ago, let's hit this. You said that you believe Ken Welch has failed, basically, you're saying, as leadership leading the city. Let's be more specific there.
From the gate, we being the city, had an opportunity to have Moffitt Cancer Center open a facility in downtown St. Pete. He killed the deal. The Rays fiasco in St. Pete, the deal was never meant to move forward. It was never put together in such a way that it was going to be beneficial to the city of St. Pete.
Did you think, let's talk about that, because I definitely wanted to mention that, because the Rays, the fact that, now they've jettisoned St. Pete basically, and they're looking here at Tampa. Did you support, obviously there was the one plan at the end there, right? In terms of the gas plant project, redeveloping those 86 acres. How would you have done it differently, I guess?
Well, I believe the deal was structured to contain too many of Welch's priorities, which did not make it beneficial to either the city as a whole or the Rays. It just was not structured properly. There were components of what people call affordable housing that didn't make any sense, because the penalties that were included for not performing just made it a cost of doing business to pay the penalty instead of actually building. It never made sense on paper, the benefit to the city. It just didn't work out. That property is more valuable than people are suggesting. The city hasn't done a comprehensive highest and best use study of the property. What is the best way to develop? And I mean, we're going to segue into what's the best way to develop the Trop without the raise. Right. So there are proposals out there now, but is it wiser to do a study to determine whether the lots are more valuable independently or as individual lots, or is it better for the city as a comprehensive development? That study hasn't been done. What I would like to see is the actual value of that property presented to city council and the administration, and then let's determine what's the best benefit for the city. We can leverage that property to offset the infrastructure repairs that we need. The mayor wants to put a general obligation bond on the ballot in November.
Right. Yeah, we want to get to that. Again, if you're just tuning in right now, we're speaking with Kevin Batdorf. He is He's a former Shore Acres Neighborhood Association president, and now he's a candidate for mayor of St. Petersburg. Same with his raise project from last year, or I guess 2024. Just briefly, what do you think that, I mean, is this part of your platform, is that Ken Welch lost the raise? I mean, because it does seem that the raise were determined, after the hurricanes, that was like their exit. They got a pass to basically say, now this thing isn't working for us. Pinellas County, they didn't make a lot of sense when they said all of a sudden they're interested. Maybe they were never that bought in the first place. But there's a perception, obviously, the ownership has changed now, that it was never going to work in St. Petersburg. Do you believe that Major League Baseball, I mean, we've just had this project for 20 plus years now. Has it really worked in St. Pete?
And maybe to piggyback on that, oftentimes with our leaders, we ask them to lead us and inspire us. What do you tell that community that is being, I'm just going to say it, rejected by the Tampa Bay Rays when they talk about St. Petersburg right now?
Well, it's a very complex issue because, I was here when the leaders were trying to get baseball.
Okay, way back in the 80s, I guess.
Yeah, with the Chicago
Giants,
White Sox and the Giants. We had deals to bring teams here. The city leaders, they were forward thinking, but when they built the Trop, they didn't build it as specifically a baseball stadium. So that was a mistake.
Is that what? Because I know they had the hockey actually played there before baseball came down.
Thunderdome for a while.
Right.
Yeah, we loved the Thunderdome.
Right, because that seems to be the tragedy, if you will, when this bill came out, when the Braves finally came in 1998, it was an outdated stadium compared to what you had going on in the rest of the country at that point.
Right. It was built as a multi-use facility. The outfield stands are still portable. You can move them in and out. It was not built as a major league stadium for a major league team. And I believe that if we had that type of development where we had an actual major league stadium designed for baseball and entertainment purposes, it would thrive in St. Pete. And the proof is opening day against the Chicago Cubs this year, sold out.
Yeah.
We can do that. People are willing to come to St. Pete.
Well, that's opening day, okay? But, come on. There's 80 other games of the year, and it's consistently been one of the worst attended in the country.
But what do you do once you get to the stadium before and after? There's one or two places you can go to.
Fergs.
I love Fergs.
Fergs is very unhappy about this, by the way, the Rays are leaving, obviously.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Look at his little restaurant turned into what it is today. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But if you had a facility that was designed to keep people there, people would come. And, there's a question about parking. There's options to put parking outside of downtown and have shuttles bring them in. There's a property, Raytheon property. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's some toxic issues with the land itself. I think we could put a parking garage there and a shuttle system to downtown. There's a lot of different options available, and I think the Rays would still thrive in St. Pete. I'd love to have the Rays stay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Kevin, I'm wondering, you've talked about your criticism of Mayor Welch and specifically the post-storm efforts. You've used the term Welch piles. We're talking about those piles of debris and whatnot. You've said that while Welch is proud of his 90-day recovery effort, you believe you could have gotten it done in 30. Could you kind of expand on that? And am I misquoting you?
You're not misquoting me.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a disaster on top of a disaster. It was unfortunate. I'm going to blame everything on Welch, but it's the administration. It wasn't just Welch, because I don't believe he was fully aware of what was going on. It was his administration that was taking misstep after misstep. So with the Welch piles, why do you put your Parks and Rec department in charge of cleaning up debris when you have a sanitation department that does this every week? That's question number one. Why was there no real plan? As we watch these piles sit there, and 90 days, it's 3 months of mold, mildew, kids getting sick, people getting sick. And the flooding that we had after Helene wasn't just salt water. They abandoned the treatment center on 62nd Avenue.
Yes, I live in that area.
And there was sewage mixed with the water. So we know that. It wasn't reported properly, I don't believe.
Do you recall, by the way, and by the way, Mayor Welch is going to be on the show in hopefully
he will have
weeks.
plenty of opportunities.
So folks
himself.
are going, oh my God, this is not fair to Ken Welch. By the way, I would love listeners to comment. The phone number is 813-239-9663, or you can email us at dj@wmf.org. I do remember Kevin talking about Hurricane Helene. Again, we're talking Kevin Batdorf. He's the former Shore Acres Neighborhood Association president, running for mayor of St. Petersburg in August. If you remember, the day of Helene, there was a press conference, and Claude Tankersley said then that there's going to be a situation where we have to shut down one of the facilities. I guess wastewater was, and I believe the reporter, Colleen Wright of the Times, had asked a couple days earlier if there was any issue about that, and the city didn't say anything about that. And then hours before the storm was coming, we learned that they were going to shut that down. Because, and I understand it because obviously there was a real concern with this huge waves of water coming in. But yes, we couldn't use our facilities for a couple days there after the storm.
Yeah, so you want to know my thought on failure to plan. When you have a prediction of a potential 12 to 15 foot storm, you don't secure a property with 6 foot fences or walls. You need to prepare for 15 foot, the maximum potential storm surge that could come in. You got to prepare for that. And speaking of preparing, let's go back to Tropicana Field for a second. What happened to the insurance? Why was that policy canceled or reduced by $250,000, and now we had to pay $65 million to repair it, $25 million deductible, got $16 million from FEMA. We still had to come out of pocket for the balance of that money.
For replacing the Tropicana Field roof, which came down, of course,
famously
after
blew off.
Milton.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. I mean, that's poor management of finances. For $250,000, it's never happened before. You can't do that as a city. You just can't take those risks. But after Helene, it was not good. The mayor actually, I get in trouble when I say that he lied, but he went on the air and misspoke. Let me use that term.
Who's slapping you on the wrist for that?
Oh, his administrator.
Oh, okay.
We got a text message. Why don't we just mention this right now? Let's see here. This person asked, what about people who have lived in St. Pete who are being forced out because of cost? Now, obviously, affordability is a huge issue. Kevin, you might have seen this. The U.S. Census came out with some numbers about a month or so ago. The number from 2024 to 2025, the second biggest area in the county in the country with population decrease was Pinellas County. Now, I want some of that has to be with the storms, obviously, and you can talk a lot about that being there in Shore Acres. But But I think some would say it is not just the storms, but that it's become more expensive. Well, it's more expensive everywhere.
Also, it's more packed than ever. I mean, I don't know where you're going to put more people in Pinellas, but
But your thoughts? Yeah.
So yeah, as a real estate broker, I looked hard at that poll, that study. A lot of those people were displaced because of the storm. In Shore Acres alone, we have 2,642 homes, 2,200 of them flooded. So every single one of those people were displaced immediately upon that flood, and most of them couldn't come home to repair their home because the city made it too difficult to get a permit to just repair.
And I would say to be fair, but that happened everywhere, not just in St. Petersburg, and all throughout Pinellas County. That's why Senator DeSegli had that bill, SB 180, that kind of went out of control. But because that was a criticism everywhere, but certainly in St. Petersburg, absolutely.
So the difference is, and I'm very familiar because I worked with Senator DeSegli on that. I helped provide ideas. The beaches didn't have building departments. They had one person per beach community that was the building department. The city of St. Petersburg has a full-fledged building department. They were totally unprepared. They had no sister cities where we could bring in other inspectors or people taking the permits. They refused to do a building mobile permit. Actually, they had it for a short time and then pulled it back, which is interesting because when we had a meeting with the mayor to talk about the things that went wrong after the storm, the mayor wasn't even aware that the administration pulled the mobile permitting back. It was very frustrating to sit there and watch his reaction when that came up. I'm sorry, what were we talking about?
Yeah, well, it's the affordability question.
Affordability.
Every politician has, or a political candidate has to talk about it, has to, because it is the biggest issue probably in Florida.
Yeah, how do we make sure that part of that diaspora isn't just because I can't afford to live here anymore and I got to go live in Brandon? Sorry to anybody in Brandon,
That's a great question. As a matter of fact, I'm doing daily videos, and that's my next one.
Oh, I got to follow you.
So the problem is supply and demand right now. We don't have enough supply in St. Petersburg for the demand of people who want to live there. Therefore, the rents go up. So it's not just supply and demand. It's the type of housing that we have available as well. So what we need to do as a city is loosen guidelines on how and where you can build. And I talk about smart development as well. Any development that is done has to provide a study that shows what the actual impact on our infrastructure is going to be, and they have to mitigate that impact before they build anything. So let's just get that straight. We're not going to overdevelop, but we do need to develop, and we need to develop more. So how do we do it? Number one, you find businesses or nonprofits that are willing to build affordable housing. Now, the term affordable is a nightmare for me because to me, affordable means whatever you can afford. Mm-hmm. I think what we're looking for
versus workforce,
workforce, or attainable housing, right? Okay. So, how do we do that? People like different types of housing, so we can't just do cookie cutter apartment complexes and neighborhoods, but we can, for instance, change the lot size requirements. Because imagine you can do tiny homes, but if you put a tiny home on a 75 by 100 foot lot, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
You can put multiple on there, but it's still
so you support that smaller lots.
I do support it in groupings. Mm-hmm. So if we have the problem with tiny homes putting multiple on one property, it's still one property.
How about building up?
Well, building up is condos. That's a tiny home in a building, right?
Right. By the way, I should say to our listeners that we're going to have a county commissioner, George Cruz, on next week and talk a lot about this issue because it's also one of the biggest issues in Florida when it comes to housing. And St. Pete's not unique on this.
The voice you're hearing, by the way, is Kevin Batdorf. He is running for mayor in the city of St. Petersburg. That election coming up this summer. Maria Scruggs, of course, the only candidate to qualify by petition. You'll be qualifying by paying the fee here this summer. I wanted to ask you. Kevin, you mentioned DeSegli here. What is the role of a mayor, specifically maybe St. Petersburg's mayor, as the state just seems more keen on meddling in a municipality's ability to make decisions for itself, talking about preemption and things like that?
And by the way, before Kevin, you think about that, but I'll only be more specific.
Yeah.
So we had a bill this past year, just signed, I think, recently. It's been deemed the anti-diversity in local government bill that people, they say here in St. Pete, it could affect the St. Pete Pride, right? It prohibits cities and counties from funding or promoting or taking official action relating to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It will also bar inclusion officers and give the government the power to remove local officials who are deemed to violate the law. What are your thoughts about that legislation?
You know, our community is important. In St. Pete, we have a very diverse community, and although we shouldn't cater to one or another, we should make it everything accessible to all. Regarding the DEI issues from the state, I would probably have had different conversations with our leadership and trying to figure out what does work and what doesn't work. Do we need specific staff for liaisons to the community? I don't think so. I think the mayor is the liaison to the community, and the mayor should be the liaison. Should we fund parades, regardless of what the parade is about? I don't know that we don't fund parades, because we provide police and fire for every event that comes out, so the city's paying for that. Should private enterprise pay the bulk of the parade? Absolutely. Absolutely. We used to have a Festival of States parade, which was a promotional event that brought high school bands from other states into St. Petersburg. That was paid for by local businesses. St. Pete provided police, fire, sanitation. And I think there is a good partnership that can be done that wouldn't skirt the state law.
Along those lines, another bill that was a preemption bill that came out this year that I think is going to affect St. Petersburg is the ban on net zero policies, basically climate change type of policies. Now, the state is doing some things. They call it resiliency, so it's not like they're totally against doing some of the stuff, but they literally don't like the term climate change, neither did the previous administration. But this is another bill where they say, theoretically, they could remove people from office if they're not, if they seem to be doing things that are, I don't know. It's very debatable about what's allowed, because some of these measures can save cost, save money for the citizens of St. Petersburg, and yet if they seem to be promoting climate change, the state now says you can't be doing that. Shore Acres, all about that and what the things about resiliency. So, what are your thoughts there?
It all comes down to semantics, doesn't it? Because we can call it whatever we want and then say, well, that's not that, it's this. But I hate the term climate change because it's used as a political term instead of what it actually is. The climate's changing. It's changed since the day the Earth was born. And it's going to change. It's going to keep changing. In Shore Acres, I can tell you that the water levels are higher than they used to be. I've been there 40 years, so I do know that water levels come up higher. Is it because of lack of maintenance of the systems? Yes. Is it because of the changing climate? Yes. How do we fix that? And there are ways to fix everyday type flooding. But what's not on the table, what no one is talking about right now, is how do we fix the real damage causer, which is a tropical storm or hurricane that comes by and pushes water into Tampa Bay. How do we fix that? How do we fix a surge that creates billions of dollars of damage? And that's what happened during Helene. That's what happened during Idalia. It's not the infrastructure as a whole failed during that night. It's a surge of 12 feet or 7 feet or 8 feet, whatever the surge was, that flooded a good portion of St. Pete. Right. So how do we fix that? And I have ideas for that as well. We can get into that if you want.
Kevin, St. Pete is just a magical city. I was there yesterday speaking with MFA for a focus group, and we just talked about The urban planners in St. Pete just got a lot of things right. The sidewalks are wide. The grid is fantastic. You can walk from here to there. Compared to Tampa, I'll add that caveat, right? What do you say? It's Preservation Month. What do you say to preservationists who love just so much of like that old St. Pete? And obviously, not everything old can stay. Not everything is safe. But thinking about a project like Skyward Living on Mirror Lake, what do you say to people who are concerned that some of the older buildings in St. Pete may be in danger? What do you say to that community?
That's a tough question because preservation causes issues that the person who owns a property in that moment may not understand. It's the person who purchases or has that property 20, 50 years from now that's going to have to go with whatever the preservation regulation is. And sometimes it's just not feasible. Should we rebuild in areas? I think we need to modernize our city. Absolutely. Our infrastructure needs to be modernized. And if new construction replaces some things that may be of historic significance, we need to keep that flavor, if I will. We need to make sure that neighborhoods contain their identity. We have really cool neighborhoods in St. Pete. Old Kenwood. If you build something new, it better be a bungalow. It better be cool looking too. Old Southeast, it's got to look like Key West. I mean, it's just we have some really unique areas in St. Pete. I want to keep the culture where it is.
What is your favorite old building in St. Pete? Like when you're walking around, you're like, oh, I love this thing. I'm so glad it exists. People may not agree with me, but I think Sunken Gardens. I love Sunken Gardens. I am so glad the city Parks and Rec department purchased that and took that off the hands of the original owners and maintain it as it used to be.
I want to tell our listeners, if you're just tuning in right now, it's 47 minutes after the hour. You're listening to Skinny here on WMNF. I'm Mitch Perry with Ray Rowe. We're speaking with Kevin Batdorf. He's a candidate for mayor in St. Petersburg. The primary election is August 18th. Kevin, we've got a call
phone calls here.
I want to get Don in, who wants to talk about Tropicana Field and the gas plant district. Hi, Don. You're on the MNF.
Yeah, hey, it's Dan.
Dan, I'm sorry.
Okay, Kevin, do you see an extension if the Rays are messing around in Tampa or looking and they got to play a couple more years? How would you deal with that extension if they wanted one?
Thank you, Dan. We'll take the call now. Yeah, that's a very real thing that could be happening here. If maybe only just for 1 year, right? They seem to be in this rush.
It's not looking good for the Rays for getting money out of Hillsborough County on their timetable.
Maybe 2029 because that's their lease is coming up. So, they came back and said, hey, can we do another year here?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the facility. It's meant for that. I don't know that a new development is going to be under construction anytime soon.
Right.
If I had my way, we'd probably do a better study and understand the actual value. So.
Well, let's talk about that, by the way, because this is going on. You mentioned that earlier. So we've got, scroll down here in terms of the facility right there. We've got, let's see here. I apologize here. I'm reaching around. Actually, first thing, let's go. You talked about the $600 million infrastructure bond that is going to be on the ballot. You say the city has significant infrastructure needs, but you're skeptical that voters will choose to pay higher city taxes on the same ballot where the state intends to include a property tax reform or a possible cut.
Correct. I mean, it's just simple math. If the governor puts something on the ballot, which he keeps saying he's going to. We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, right.
That says, I want to get rid of your taxes or lower your taxes. And then we put something out there from the city saying, we want to increase your taxes to pay for stuff that we should have paid for in the past. And I don't think people are going to vote for that. I mean, they would have to have a really strong campaign showing the benefits of paying more money for doing your job.
Now, also, let's talk about the redevelopment of historic gas plant district. So this is the fourth time in 20 years the city has initiated a request for proposal for the 86-acre site. the city hosted an open house recently to kickstart a 30-day public comment period for the latest round of developer bids, all of which reimagine that site without a ballpark. And there are 4 development teams the city considers the top contenders. This includes the R.K. Ellison Oris LLC, the Berg Bid LLC, Pinellas County Housing Authority, the Foundation Vision Partners. What are you thinking about in those groups there?
I have difficulty with the way the city runs its processes. It seems to me, and this is a personal opinion, that decisions are made before it goes to the public. So we kind of already know where the mayor is leaning, and I don't think there's a real question about that. But I want to know what's the actual value of that property before we go under contract. If we're giving the property away and not receiving the benefit the city should receive, it's a no-go.
And then, the thing about the gas plant, you're running to replace St. Petersburg's first black mayor. The gas plant is a place with just these scars for an entire community. And, I get the vibe that you don't like the divisive nature of sometimes the way this rhetoric goes, but what do you say to a black community that just feels like it's been stepped on and disregarded for so many years? They get to see Ken Welch elected, whether they agree or disagree with how Ken Welch has conducted himself in office. How do you support that community and make sure that we don't go backwards there?
Well, and we shouldn't go backwards. I believe that property needs to benefit the entire city, which will it will also benefit certain neighborhoods where I guess we have black neighborhoods. Here's something that's interesting. Mayor Welch went to Lakewood High School, which is in South St. Pete, mostly a white neighborhood. I went to Gibbs High School when it was transitioning from an all-black high school to in a mixed school. So when I went to Gibbs High School, there was 60 to 70% black students in the school. I'm very familiar with the community. I can't change the color of my skin.
By the way, guys, Kevin is white. It's the radio.
Yeah. So
wait, Kevin, you said you don't think there's black neighborhoods? I mean,
no, there are.
Yeah.
But as how do you define what is a black neighborhood? I mean, black people live there. People live in my neighborhood. We have all different colors. I don't know. I understand talking to some of the residents there. They want to maintain a culture. I'd like to understand more about what culture they want to actually maintain. I want to uplift them. Some of the people I've talked to, they want benefits to make their life better, and I agree with that. I believe we should be able to lift up all our residents, all our neighbors, to a level that makes sense. I mean, we need to have more workforce housing, but it shouldn't be at the gas plant. It should be in areas where people are actually going to live and be a community. We can lift everyone up in this city.
I want to go. Actually, we have a phone call here. I think this might be about USF Sarasota Mayor. But anyway, he's been waiting. Mike has been waiting patiently, so I want to get you on the air. Mike, hi, you're on radio.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. I was, in fact, originally going to call about the USF issue. Yeah. I am a graduate of New College. I graduated from that fine institution in '85, and I completely agree with Karen Holbrook and the USF SM community that New College and USF are two completely different animals.
Right.
Even today, they're completely different animals. I mean, USF is essentially a commuter school. It provides people with an education for professional work, and New College has been a liberal arts school, and even today purports to be that. Very different populations and goals. So, what's really going on, if I may elaborate, is that you have to follow the money here. I've actually prowled the halls of the New College. Is the DeSantis administration, or the DeFascist administration, as I like to call it, is trying to turn New College into some kind of Hillsdale conservative think tank institution. You have all these scholars coming in from around the world, and so and they're looking to take over USF, not because they're deeply interested in good education for the locals or good education in general, but to satisfy some higher conservative objective. That said, let me offer one thing, and I will get off the phone. Regarding your current guest and the issues you talked about, land development regulations and anti-diversity, all this, it's the same problem. You have the state leaders like DeSantis who are playing to conservative audiences. He's perhaps trying to run for president, and they're trying to impose top-down regulations on everybody. So you can't have pride parades. You can't have you can't have local regulations. It's all got to be one vision imposed from the top down.
Okay, Mike, thank you for that. Again, we just have a few minutes left to go here. It's almost 11:56. Mitch Perry, Ray Rowe. We're talking to St. Pete mayoral candidate Kevin Batdorf. Kevin, a couple more for you. You talk about the permitting process. Now, this is something I hear. In fact, I heard Bob Buckhorn say this about Tampa, and I was thinking, and when we talked to Mayor Buckhorn, I'd love to ask him this. Like, he wants to improve the permitting process.
Also, Bob, come on the show.
Well, you were there for 8 years. Like, maybe you had a chance to improve the permitting process. But I hear this from all mayoral candidates, and I think you talk about certainly what happened with hurricanes. I mean, that's very real. But okay, how would you go about changing that, improving the permitting process? It seems like, like I say, this is a perennial issue.
Yeah, so my experience with the permitting department, the people there, I love the people. It's the process that's flawed. We need, especially after a storm, to loosen up the regulations somewhat. We need to have mobile permitting available. If you have one neighborhood that has 2,200 homes flooded, you need to have a mobile permitting station there if you're requiring everybody to pull a permit to replace their drywall, which under normal circumstances you don't need a permit, but after a storm, apparently you do. We need more communication. We need a more modern system. We need to have, like Duke Energy does when the power goes out, when they know a storm is coming, they bring people from all over the country. We need people to come in and help with the permitting after a storm from other areas. Right. And we don't have those connections. I would make those connections and be prepared.
I know we talk a lot about policy and really deep, municipal stuff here, but I want to ask you, Kevin, like just a little bit about you. Like on a Friday night, you don't want to cook dinner. What are you doing for fun in St. Pete? Where can I find you, like hanging out, being a person? Where are those places? What are some of your favorite spots? Why haven't you left St. Pete? Like, what do you just love about it so much?
Well, I do love St. Pete. On a Friday night, I'm usually at home. I have a 14-year-old son. He plays flag football. He's very active in school, so we participate in a lot of activities that way. But I like block parties.
So I can come to your driveway and have a beer.
I love block party. We had a block party last week and the week before where our neighbors just get together and we get to meet new people. We have a transitioning neighborhood, so...
Yeah. Okay, what did listeners tell you? We've been listening to Kevin Batdorf. He is one of the candidates for mayor. I want to mention the other candidates right now. Maria Scruggs, former St. Pete Fire Chief Jim Marge, City Council Member Brandy Gabbard, former Governor and former Congressman Charlie Crist, and, of course, Mayor Ken Welch. The plan is to have all of them on before August 18th, certainly. So, Kevin, thank you for being the first of the St. Pete mayoral candidates to be on the show here.
I really appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. I want to say quickly, we'll transition, Ray. Next week, we're going to have another, like I say, county commissioner from Manatee County on, and we're going to go really into housing. So this is a guy who really cares about that issue. We touched on a little bit here because it is a huge issue with growth, smart growth, what have you, development. Big, coming out of Tallahassee, there's just so much that happens up there with that in terms of issues with developers and the tug back and forth on that. So I look forward to having that discussion next week.
Yeah, and as we wrap up here, it's kind of unfair to throw this question at you, Kevin, but thumbs up, thumbs down. We talk about Albert Whitted. Would you ride an air taxi, autonomous?
Oh my God! Absolutely. Are you kidding?
Oh, you would? Okay.
I'd look at Albert Whitted and wonder what is the actual benefit to the entire city, and if we have drone taxis, that puts us on the world map again. I actually saw one in Dubai, in action, absolutely I'd do that.
All right. So that's Kevin Batdorf. He's running for mayor in the city of St. Petersburg. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much to Dr. Karen Holbrook earlier in the show talking about USF Sarasota Manatee. My name is Ray Rome, the editor-in-chief at Creative Loafing Tampa Bay. On behalf of myself, my co-host and show co-founder Mitch Perry, senior reporter at the Florida Phoenix, Anthony Madur is on the phones for us today, Skip Sassy on the boards. Thank you so much for supporting WMNF Tampa, your community radio station. Joellen Schilke has the lights set very nicely in Studio One, and she's ready to bring you art in your ear. Thank you so much. I hope everybody has a great weekend and wears a lot of sunscreen because it's going to be nice.
WMNF Tampa.